Hey everyone, just want to give some quick clarifications before the episode starts. First off, sorry for the delay in getting this out. It was a very long episode, and much like some other previous ones, I decided to split it into two halves to get them out faster. Combine that with a lot of recent real-life commitments and Thanksgiving break, traveling to visit family has meant additional delay in editing things, so thank you for your patience. Second, I'll just admit up front, we had a record number of technical issues on this recording. So far, I've been able to edit a lot of them out, but others you might notice, like when on my end, one side of the stereo track gets louder than the other. I'm not sure how to fix that, but I did at least try and make them less loud compared to the rest of the track. Anyway, please enjoy this episode, including me and Tyrone's thoughts on Thor Ragnarok, and our thoughts on the original 3 X-Men movies. Episode 2 will contain the remaining spinoffs and prequel movies. Now I'll cut the chase and get straight to what you came for. In the case of a lot of the movies...
Shit!
Oh!
That wasn't nice.
It's not cracked or anything, is it?
We experience that now.
Better, yeah, it is better that now. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 21 of Sketch Watch Play. I am John Fleury.
And I'm Tyrone Selby.
Yep, another returning guest, and there's a good kind of irony in the fact that our first two guests to fill in Chris's shoes are my brother and now Chris's brother.
Woo.
Yep, it's a little family tradition. And actually, for those who missed it, you are actually a returning guest. You joined us for... I can't remember what episode number it was, but it was our Transformers cartoon retrospective. We talked every cartoon from Beast Wars onward. And,
yes, Transformers Prime, Beast Wars, Beast Machines,
and some lesser stuff.
Yes.
I think we like universally agree that Prime and Beast Wars were the highlights, and then there were some that we were mad about, and one or two we were very down about. But it was fun discussing all of them, really. And you picked another kind of behemoth of a franchise to talk about in terms of something iconic in one particular medium, but we'll be getting to that. First off,
yes.
Especially for those who didn't hear that episode, Tyrone, tell us a little bit about yourself and like your own personal interests and projects.
Oh, so about me, I am a comic book writer coming from the industry of filmmaking and film festival directing. So I actually had my own film festival, Soul for Real Film Festival, which is actually still running.
Nice.
And actually in a couple weeks, we'll be opening submissions, early bird submissions. So if you're a filmmaker out there, take a look at Soul for Real. That's SOUL as in the person's soul, the number 4, and reel as in a film reel.
Yeah. Does it have a theme to it, like shorts or genres, or is it kind of a submit whatever you want kind of thing?
It is a shorts film festival, so anything under an hour.
Okay.
And the theme is relationships, and that you can take that umbrella as far as you want to take it,
as long as there's some tie to that one word concept,
some kind of relationship to something, somewhere, or someone. And we have gotten some. I remember when I was co-directing Soul for Real Film Festival, we've gotten some amazing takes on relationships, past relationships with a child and his imaginary friend.
Yeah, like not just romantic relationships, but just
no,
those
not
you
at
care
all.
about.
Just as long as you can clearly see and define a relationship.
Yeah, as you said, it falls under that
as you
umbrella.
want to. Yeah,
That's very cool. Is there a site or social media page people can look up more about the Film Fest?
absolutely. You can find Soul for Real Film Festival on Twitter and Facebook just by searching Soul for Real Film Festival.
Yep, the way you spelled it.
Yep. And also the director's website is rockabyeent.com. ENT standing for entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the film festival side, which I haven't touched for in quite a while because I've been focusing on my own projects now. So for the first part of my career, I was curating projects. Now I'm starting to create my own projects. So I have my comic book Elements of Light. I'm working on issue 3. which is super exciting.
Yeah, I will say, I said before, I've looked a little bit of it. The artwork is gorgeous, so props there.
It is. Props to Krishna and Balram Banerjee, twin brothers out in India. They do fantastic work.
And are you the head writer for it?
I am. I am the writer and creator of Elements of Light.
Nice.
Also co-written by first issue and a half was co-written by my brother Christopher Wade, who was also your host for a long time.
Listeners of the show probably know of Chris, and
that's right.
Yes, early next year you'll be hearing him again.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, again, that is my older brother and my executive producer, and we are also in the works of creating our first animated short film, The Will of Monsters.
Oh, yeah, which I recommend people go back and listen to. I believe it was either episode 13 or, no, probably 14, where me and Chris talked our own like personal and passion projects. And the animatic for Will of Monsters is already on Vimeo, and we've linked to it in the past in show descriptions. I'll include it here still. But he's going to be looking into producing more advanced, like at least visually, versions of it, possibly through crowdfunding. And I'm very excited to see what he does with it. You as well.
I can't remember if the animatic is still live at the current moment. I'll have to double check with him on that, because I do know that we possibly took it down so that we can start reworking the script and start getting into the final productions of things. I can't remember. It could still be live. I just can't remember.
I'll double check before I link to it.
Earlier this year, yeah.
And so anything else you'd like to plug before we start talking about our main things?
The only thing is, I have, since creating Elements of Light, I've been back into the comic convention circuit, and I do have to give a shout out to All-Star Comic-Con, which will be in the Northern Virginia area coming August of 2018. And
Nice.
I will definitely be there for that. Plus some other ones, but that is going to be like my main con.
Cool. And I did want to. Oh yeah, no, I remember you were. I wasn't able to attend to it. You recently did a panel at another expo. Was it Small Press?
No, it was not. It was at a different convention, and I did two different events at that convention. It was a local writers panel with Chris Schwartzlander and Johnny Lupshaw. We're all three of us are writers hailing from Virginia, and we all actually have our books in the local comic shop, Comic Logic, in Ashburn, Virginia. So we did a local writers panel, and then I also did my own workshop on writing and creating interesting characters in comic books and film, which was extremely well received. All of the attendees are making me do it again. Plus, they want me to do another one. Yeah. So for All-Star Comic-Con, I am redoing writing interesting characters for comic books and film, and also world building for comic books and film.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to refresh my memory. What was this convention called, the one you just did again?
NovaCon.
No, that's correct. I think I wanted to attend, but other commitments were in the way at the time. I was especially bummed when I saw you were doing panels. I was like, oh, I got to see that. But there'll be more opportunities like that based on what you just said.
All-Star Comic-Con is the new thing, so definitely look for All-Star Comic-Con in August.
I will. But are you ready to move on to our opening talk?
Let's do it.
All right. So I think it's, the two of us have seen a little movie, not kind of flew under the radar for most. It is an interesting little art house film called Thor Ragnarok.
Hela, the goddess of death, has invaded Asgard.
Oh, I've missed this.
And you and I had a fight recently.
Did I win?
No, I won, easily.
Doesn't sound right.
Well, it's true.
Maybe you've heard of it.
Maybe heard of it. It's very underground.
Yeah, it's gained some traction, though. You know, those who know about it are spreading the word a bit. But in all seriousness, and I will say, much like we've opened some episodes by talking about current superhero movies, including, I believe, Spider-Man: Homecoming and Wonder Woman. So I will say spoilers abound for what we get into. So I'd recommend, since we always add timestamps in the show description, if you haven't seen Ragnarok but are planning to, just skip to our main topic. But So overall, what did you think of Ragnarok, and how would you compare it to your thoughts on the previous Thor films?
Okay, so that was actually two questions, which I want to pay close attention to how I answer them, because
maybe I should answer them in the reverse order. Actually,
exactly. That's exactly why I said that. And so I actually loved the movie. I loved Thor Ragnarok. I do know that a lot of people out there are very opinionated about the difference in feel and humor and
tone, everything,
for
pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. But so my position is this: as a person who came from, as I just mentioned, as a person who came from film and film festivals, I always see each film as a standalone, even though there might be backstory that came from another movie. Each movie is standalone. There's no telling, if it's the same director, if it's the same actors, if it's the same musicians, if it's the same writers, if it's, sometimes it's a whole completely new cast or a whole different new film crew filming in a new location. And it's a new time. When was it that Thor Dark World came out? That was what?
Like 3 or 4 years ago.
3-4 years ago. That was a different time. So, now with, a lot of things that are said about what I can tell about Thor Ragnarok is that, it's trying to be Guardians of the Galaxy. Well, guess what? Guardian of the Galaxy is now. Like, we're in a new superhero film era where everything is bright and colorful and funny and, it's whimsical.
Yeah, no, this actually does tie into a direction the Marvel Cinematic Universe, at least, is consciously taking, and they've confirmed that it's going to be continued that way, which is, I think I've heard friends term it as Cosmic Marvel, where it's like more about getting on off Earth and really delving into this greater universe and the crazier stuff it brings with it that they toyed with in Thor and then really committed to in Guardians.
Absolutely.
And you can actually, I think it's pretty clear, even the next two Avengers are going to be going that direction with all the aliens involved and stuff.
Absolutely. With everyone knows that the Infinity War is coming. Mm-hmm. And, with all of these different tie-ins with, Doctor Strange and Guardians of the Galaxy, all of these off-world story plots, we have to take it there.
You have to prepare audiences for that.
Correct. We have to prepare it. It can't just be culture shock.
Yeah, because it's still. It's still might take getting used to seeing like Iron Man and Captain America there, but they've been building up to it, at least getting us acquainted with this style through other franchises.
Absolutely, and so I thought it was a great movie. I will say, for me, there was a little bit too much of the garbage world.
Oh, the Grandmaster's world?
Yeah, like, to me, that was that dragged on a little bit too much.
That actually, I did want to bring up my thoughts on the movie a little bit, not to sound selfish, but I will say I like the first Thor quite a bit, and I actually rewatched it recently with my grandma, and I liked it more than I remembered it. It's a solid little story, just not as flashy as a lot of stuff came afterwards. Dark World, I think, is not awful, but it's one of the weakest MCU films overall. It has very little of a spark to it. It doesn't feel like progresses Thor forward that much, especially because I really noticed. Yeah, my biggest problem with Ragnarok, even though I really like it, is that it kind of feels like two different films at points. Like, the opening and closing acts are genuinely continuing the main Thor and Asgard story, and the middle stuff might as well be a different movie that Thor happens to get himself involved in. To me, that was exactly the point, and it was just. It was a little. I understand exactly why it needed to be there. However, it was a little bit too much of it. I think they could have gone about a different way of better integrating the two. Especially because
I would have loved to see I would have loved to see more of a little bit of the backstory of Valkyrie. Like, she only got about 5 minutes worth of backstory. I would have loved to know
confused about how she survived Hela and then ended up in this place. Also a little confused about how even Hulk ended up there, because last I saw he was on our Earth, and I don't know if that jet was built for space.
Oh, right. I was about to say that they did acknowledge that. However,
they didn't truly delve into it.
No, and I was fine with it. I was like,
it didn't ruin it.
Whatever. He's here. It's fine.
Mm-hmm. I also... go ahead. You first.
Go ahead.
Okay. No, it's just the interesting thing about this is in talking about how the stuff that's more closely tied to the existing. This movie is the beginning of it and the ending of it are, for all intents and purposes, a soft reboot of Thor, because they devote the first third to be like, we're killing off most of the characters you already know that aren't Thor and Loki. Like,
right.
I was shocked when like, oh, Odin gone, those warrior buddies dead. Right. And at the end, Asgard incinerated. It's just. By the way this ends, and the fact that Marvel, there's been saying, like, in general, Infinity War and Avengers 4 are going to affect the entire setting of the Marvel Universe. Like, if we get a Thor 4, it's going to be more like this, and has shed its former, like, style and identity, which is kind of bold. I could see that being a little off-putting for people who liked either the first two.
Right.
But thankfully, what they do now is really charming.
I thought it was super charming. I had a conversation with a friend about Thor Ragnarok and how people are giving it flack, and no one's happy about movies anymore because it's not the same. And I'm like, of course it's not the same. That's why it's different.
I think a lot of people are happy with this. They just have some issues with it, like the two of us do. Like,
oh my
I
gosh,
will say,
how dare you laugh?
I will. Oh yeah. I mean, I will say, like, I saw the Rotten Tomatoes summary where it's like maybe the best MCU movie. Like, no, it's really good.
No,
but, I mean, I'd honestly place it on par with the first Thor, but for entirely different reasons because they're such different movies. Like, the first one, I think, tells a more cohesive story, but this new one is more imaginative and funny, and so they each have different strengths compared to the other.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, it's very whimsical. It's very off-world. I don't even. We left Earth within 15 minutes of the movie and never came back.
Yeah, that's fine.
And
generally people's least favorite parts of Thor were the Earth parts before.
But now we're complaining because it's too bright and it's too funny and blah 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 blah. I'm like, okay, pick a thing and stay with the thing, please. Like, either you want dark and brooding Earth, or you want whimsical and colorful space.
I'm generally fine with the new whimsical stuff. I think just my main issue is just how much they threw away of the existing mythos. It was a little jarring to just see all these characters dying and just a clear sense of fuck everything that happened before that doesn't involve Thor and Loki. And I guess Heimdall.
Yeah, that was my thing. It was I didn't quite get enough of Hela.
Yeah, I liked her too.
I loved Hela. Like, I loved her, and then they never explained the giant wolf.
Oh, that's probably just a thing. Like, there's a nod to comic fans. Like, that was her old steed or something.
But since it played it played a big enough of a role where I kind of wanted that backstory.
Yeah. That actually was not an issue for me because we've seen so much outlandish stuff at this point that you can just buy, like, this is her most powerful beast and it's a giant wolf. We just had two movies with a talking raccoon. I feel like something like this is Howard the Duck is in this universe walking around in space. I can deal with a giant wolf that still acts like a trained wolf.
Right. And it was, to me, it was more so because, why does she love this wolf so much? Like,
I'm guessing it was tied to her original history with Odin. Like,
right.
He was like her main mount, so that's why.
And things like that. I want those little bits of information.
Yeah. What surprised me is because I've been wondering. Some people have been theorizing about with Thanos for a while. Is in the comics, his main motivation behind all the Infinity stuff was to impress Death. Like, the personification of Death of the Grim Reaper was this woman in the comics. There's been no indication that there's going to be anything like that in these movies, but when they were building up Hela as the goddess of death, I was like, maybe they're going to keep her alive, and she is going to be hooking up with Thanos or something. At the end, no, she is very, very dead. Though to be fair, this movie touches on basically necromancy, so I guess they could still do something.
Well, I don't know. We never actually saw her die.
We didn't see disintegration, so maybe maybe that's a way of being leaving a little low. I guess they could still do it, but I guess they had to show in some way that her threat was extinguished because Asgard was disintegrated and she was left there. So maybe they can find someone can find a way to revive her. I guess they're leaving some avenues open, but for all intents and purposes, with this story, she is no longer a threat.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've actually seen some people complaining about her. I would not. I think she was a kind of over the top in a different way than someone like Loki. Just someone very relishing in because just how OP she is, really. Nobody can stand a chance against her in this movie, and Thor has to rely on Ragnarok to do it. By the way, I found out, I don't remember the name of the big demon who was at the beginning and the end that caused Ragnarok, but I found out he was voiced by Clancy Brown, which warmed my heart.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, not many people know who that is, but Lex Luthor from the 90s cartoons, Hedgard in Shawshank Redemption, and Mr. Krabs. That's the odd one. Oh, and the original voice of the villain in Crash Bandicoot. But there's some other stuff. I think this actually showed a little growth for Loki towards the end. Oh,
absolutely.
I really expected at the end when he was talking to Thor last time, Thor even throws the thing at him, oh yeah, you're a hologram, you didn't stick with us. And then he catches it, no.
I liked that Loki wasn't just a person to ship anymore. I cared about him now.
Well, for some people, he's always going to be that.
That's fine, but now I can care about him.
Yeah, you get the sense he is starting to have a little bit of a turnaround to more of an anti-hero than a villain.
I get more of a personality. I get more of a history. I'm invested in Loki now, and it's not oh, Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah, I'm actually curious to see how, what he and also Nebula are going to be going through in Avengers 3 and 4.
Right.
But because Loki, because of his shaky history of allegiance, Nebula because of her ties and vendetta with Thanos. Also, have you ever read the original Infinity comics?
I actually have not, so I am
skimmed through
along for the ride.
Something I'm wondering if they'll try approaching in maybe Avengers 4 is that towards the end, Nebula grabs the gauntlet and overtakes Thanos as the main villain.
I see.
Kind of wondering if they'll go in that direction for her, but it's they're keeping that hush-hush, obviously. Also, maybe the best role for the Hulk so far, at least since the first Avengers.
I'm curious. One thing that I'm very intrigued on is since Thor doesn't have the hammer.
Yep. Now he's got the thunder lightning within himself.
Yeah. Is he going to fight the Infinity War without the hammer?
Yeah, he's going to have to. He doesn't. The end of the movie established in his, not really a lesson, but a revelation Thor experiences himself, is he finds out Mjolnir wasn't the source of the power, it was a conduit.
Right.
Which is what Odin's ghost or vision reveals to him, and that unleashes his inner power. So he's, for all I know, he'll be shooting thunder and lightning himself in Infinity War. And they confirmed he'll have the eye patch too. That was a nice thing to keep secret.
I do like that. I do like
in the trailers they edited that out.
However, my feel is, sure, Thor can use his lightning whenever he wants to now, but the hammer is also its own weapon.
Not anymore.
And now Thor has to learn how to fight without his hammer.
That might be something that's touched on in the next two movies.
Now, here's my thing, okay? And this is complete Tyrone loophole, fanfic writing, whatever you want to call it. Someone just needs to go back to the Netherlands, pick up the damn pieces, and glue the shit back together.
Fix it with glue.
That's right. It's still sitting there on the edge of the cliff.
If it's like Gorilla Glue or something, then maybe.
It's still there.
Could be, yeah.
It's not like it's cosmic dust. The pieces are still there.
Yeah, I am going to miss it because it's just such an iconic thing.
Yeah, and that was my thing is okay, I don't think we've ever seen, to my knowledge, okay, for all of the people out there that read Thor religiously, please don't attack me, but I personally have never seen Thor without a hammer.
You might have to get used to it. Like I said, this is throwing away a lot of the established things about Thor, including, like, at the end, like, I do believe I read that in the comics at some points when they needed to migrate the Asgardians, they found a place on Earth. And that could be something that happens post, Thanos.
Right.
We'll have to see.
Someone finds the hammer pieces.
Or like one of the planets from Guardians. Who knows?
Right.
I mean, they do end the movie with him with, basically Earth it is.
Right.
But, for all we know, that could be a red herring. And obviously, you saw the first post-credits thing with that big ship.
Yeah.
Which did you see the leaked Infinity War trailer a few months back?
Yes.
Where, I guess, small spoiler for Infinity War, one of the first things is that Thor is drifting unconscious in space and crashes onto the Guardians' windshield and meets up with them and has to fill them in what's going on. So I'm guessing maybe... that's what makes me also think it's Thanos, is that there are hints that Loki took the Tesseract with him before Asgard was destroyed.
Right.
We don't see him pick it up when he's running through the hall collecting some stuff. He glances at it for a little bit, and it's like, yeah, I doubt he would leave that behind. So maybe Thanos was able to track it down. And that's his reasoning, though hopefully he doesn't kill all the Asgardians, especially Korg. We haven't even brought up Korg, who is a real show stealer, I thought. Do you know who I'm talking about? Do you remember who Korg was, the big rock guy?
Oh, okay, got it. I'm back now.
Yeah, Korg was awesome.
I loved him.
He was so good. He looks like the Thing, but he's got this mom. Apparently,
he's like a scrawny teenage version of the Thing.
He's voiced by the director.
I did not know that.
From New Zealand. He kind of sounds like Charlton Copley, I thought. Like, have you ever seen District 9? It kind of meek, kind of same accent. So, hello, buddy.
Yep.
But he's like, for a big warrior, he's also just kind of a very, kind of slightly dumb sweetheart. But just, man, I laugh so hard when, like, Loki ends a hologram and he just runs in, piss off, ghost!
Yes.
And the fact that he keeps having back and forth, the guy, that little alien doesn't even really talk. And at the end, Meek's been dead this whole time. I've just been carrying around because I feel guilty for stepping on him. Oh, hey, you're alive. Look at that, everybody.
Right. I loved him. He was really great. He really started, I think that was the point where Thor Ragnarok started to bring a charm.
Yes. No, I think once they finished all the tying up loose ends of the previous movie and got to like we talked about how disconnected the present planet is,
right?
That's where the charm and humor and real spectacle and fun really kicked in.
Absolutely.
And I mentioned a little bit about just I really like the approach they take with Hulk too. This is that movie that's more Hulk than Bruce Banner.
Yes.
It's kind of nice that now he can talk too, because he's been in Hulk form for 2 years, so he's finally able to.
Yeah.
And you find out why. It's actually sad, because he touches on people hate and fear me on Earth. Here, I'm a celebrity. I don't want to go back to Earth.
Right. Yeah, and it kind of. I was talking to a friend, and he felt that Thor Ragnarok kind of ruined the idea of a Planet Hulk movie, and I'm like,
do that for a while. I don't know if they will.
We're not. I'm sorry. I don't think we will ever get a Hulk movie.
Do you know the reason why they haven't done another solo Hulk movie?
I do not know the official reason. I could give you my own theory.
That Universal still owns partial film rights, because they're the one who did the Ang Lee version, and I think they helped co-distribute the Ed Norton one. So basically, it's kind of a Spider-Man situation where like they're okay with Marvel using him as a supporting character, but to do another solo flick would require going through a lot more red tape.
Right.
So
that's the reason. More legal matters, and my thing is
less that they don't want to, and more that it's just it might be more trouble than it's worth.
My thing is, I don't really think that Hulk has enough of a story plot to actually have an interesting, worthwhile Hulk movie.
The thing is, the Ed Norton, The Incredible Hulk, that is my least favorite MCU movie by a mile. That's the only one I straight up dislike, and it was a very boring story, and he was a boring character. But what makes me think that I kind of want to see it again is that Mark Ruffalo brought a lot more to both characters, even.
Sure,
he made
absolutely.
Branagh a little more quirky and good-hearted, and Hulk was like, because I've read he does the mocap and voice for Hulk, which the other actors had not done. So he's still putting himself into the role, and you get a lot of good fun. I love the fact that him turning back into Banner for the first time in years is essentially him waking up from a 2-year hangover.
Yeah, absolutely. That was genius.
Thor has to fill him in on so much.
It begs the question, he's been Hulk for quote unquote 2 years or however long he's been Hulk. But
I think they touch on the fact that time flows faster in the Taskmaster's realm.
Right.
So.
Right. But the Hulk was happy.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. He found a place where he was accepted and cherished. So
why was he still Hulk if he only turns into Hulk when he's angry, but the Hulk was happy? You see what I'm saying? It's kind of like...
that is kind of catch-22. Maybe it's because if he had a mental reason where he wanted to stay the Hulk, not just because of anger. So that's my main guess. I don't know. But, there's
this is kind of an interesting question to ask,
It's like, I know people took issue in the first Avengers when there's the part, I'm always angry, where basically you find out he'd become Hulk at will, who just doesn't want to, actually. And I even touched on the fact at this point that now, like, his body's grown so used to the Hulk personality that if it happens again, he doesn't know how long it'll be before, or if ever, you see Banner again. And since he stays Hulk for the last 20 minutes, I'm kind of wondering if we'll see very little Bruce Banner in the next Avengers.
Yeah.
Though, actually, you know what? Just show him Black Widow, because that's what did the trick in this. But she probably won't be able to be with him 24/7. So anything else you want to touch on with Ragnarok? Because I do have one other thing.
I do love that they're creating a Thor team.
A new Thor team, yeah.
Yeah, like they've got these quote-unquote Revengers with Valkyrie, and I always forget the character's name, but Idris Elba.
Heimdall.
Yes.
I was hoping he'd have a bigger role at this point, because now Idris Elba is huge, and granted it's more hands-on, but no, nothing huge quite yet. Though at least it was a different kind of character in terms of his actions.
Yeah, and I think it was just more of that role.
Yeah.
It wasn't as involved because of the story plot that it took.
There's already so much going on, too.
Yeah.
They might have known it would get too crammed. He tried to give him his whole own arc. Though the idea that he's kind of a savior of Asgard until the others show up, I still think that's kind of cool.
Right.
Because it's better than the first two. I think even Adrian Tiller complained, like, I'm basically a doorman in those first two movies.
Right.
And that, to be fair, that was actually, the first Thor was where I first heard of him, because I still have not seen his TV stuff. But now he's in another movie every couple months, so maybe they can find a way someday to expand on him, because I like Idris Elba in general.
I've always loved Idris Elba as an actor.
Yeah, I'm going to pull a Chris here. I'm a straight man, but he is quite a hunk.
He is,
especially with his natural accent.
Oh my gosh, that is such a charming.
You saw Zootopia, right?
I'm sorry.
You saw Zootopia, right?
Yes,
because he's in that as police chief doing his natural accent, and I just keep him here in my mind where he's going, "One teensy little otter."
Yes. If you've ever seen The Office, there's a point where...
Is he in the British Office?
No, he's actually... So what happened was there's a point where Steve Carell leaves the office.
Oh, he was one of the new bosses they tried?
He was one of the new bosses, and all of the women in the office swoon over him, and he looks at the camera and goes, I know my effect on women. And I was like, God damn it, Idris Elba.
That's just meta. That's Idris Elba just breaking character.
Yeah.
He was like movie with him and Kate Winslet that's all about them struggling to survive and then just wanting to bone because it's Idris Elba and Kate Winslet.
I was like, they wrote Idris Elba with a new name, but he's still being Idris Elba, which was fantastic.
I really need to watch Luther, actually, because that's where most people first heard of him, and I've heard he's great in it. But the main thing I want to talk about, the last thing, I can't believe we haven't mentioned Jeff Goldblum at all, because I loved him in this.
I am impartial.
To Jeff Goldblum?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know what it is.
He's a weird guy. His general persona, just the way he talks. Like, most impressions of Jeff Goldblum usually start with because you watch Jurassic Park, and like I think of Jurassic Park, Independence Day, and especially The Fly. Independence Day is fun, and the other two I like legit love.
I think my issue was this was the most whimsical, and I keep throwing that word around, but this is the most color I've seen thrown on this actor. And it was a little off-putting because I've seen him in Jurassic Park and I've seen him in Independence Day.
Yeah. Well,
and now he's
not as much
in this
makeup as in The Fly, but that's different.
Yeah. It was just so different, and I don't know. It was kind of jarring a little bit.
No, he was still. You could still tell who very much get his mannerisms. But I think what was really, really fun about him was that he was less. No, it was you got the feeling he did not want to admit he was malicious. Because one of his opening scenes is him like melting guy, and then to be like, okay, clean that up. One of my favorite lines is, I guess his second man is talking about like the slaves as the employees. Like, no, don't use the S word. They're prisoners with jobs.
That's right.
And of course, the after credits scene where he's still trying to play off like, hey, the revolution is tied.
We'll call it a draw.
That's the last line. Good news, it's a draw. And
that's great.
I hope we see him again because we probably know they haven't killed him, so it would be fun to give him a little cameo. I mean, I doubt he'll be in a position of a significant role with power again, but I think it's fun to have like some of the best Marvel villains, because I can often note like their villains can be very hit or miss in MCU, but some of the most fun ones are those who are very more over the top and relishing that kind of thing, which both he and Hela fell into, and also Loki as well. Maybe not so much in the first Thor, but everything since.
Yes.
In the fourth Thor, he's kind of tragic. You actually feel a little bad for him, but by Avengers, he's just a malicious. He's a little bitch, kind of. And Tom Hiddleston and the writers have been running that in really good ways. Just his interactions with Thor in this. I think the biggest laugh my audience got to the point where we missed whatever joke was afterward was when Thor's talking about when we were kids, he would disguise himself as a snake, and because he knew I liked snakes, and then I would walk up, it would turn back and go, "Blood, it's me." And just
I think my biggest laughing point, and it was so on the nose, but I just loved it, was when Thor got just as smashed as Loki did in Avengers.
Oh, all of Loki's reactions to the Hulk.
Loki's reaction was just perfect,
because
well timed.
His first encounter with Hulk is I think it's maybe the funniest joke in any of the movies, and this was the perfect way to follow up on it, where he's just like, absolutely. Oh shit,
right. And
then when Hulk is clobbered, he stands up like, yeah, that's what it feels like. Now you know.
Yes, it was such a soul satisfying moment,
especially for Loki fangirls, I'll bet.
Right, and
boys.
For the first time, I actually rooted for Loki. Like, it was like, yes, take that.
Yeah. The whole fight scene is a mixture of. I love that he keeps trying to replicate Black Widow's calming thing, like the sun is setting, and so rarely does it work.
Oh, right.
You're not ScarJo, Thor. Also, did you catch the cameos at the beginning when they were doing the play?
Yes.
My audience freaked out.
And that was great.
The obvious one was Matt Damon as Loki. I didn't catch the rest. Apparently, Sam Neill was Odin, which I think is the director did Hunt for the Wilder People, and apparently some of the actors in this, the small roles, were people like that. Sam Neill, that woman who was the second in command to Grandmaster, was in one of his last movies. So it was kind of just him bringing back old friends. And I did read, apparently Liam Hemsworth was Thor in the play, which is just so meta. And I'll have to bring that up to my mom because she's a huge Hunger Games fan, which he was in. And but yeah, I think even though we touched on some of the issues we do have with it, like I don't think it's like one of the very best of the MCU movies, but I think I had a great time with it, especially once you hit the main once they got the foundation on the way and ran with what the rest of the plot was going to be. Also, best way to throw totally botch your heroic speech when Thor throws that ball to try and break the window. And just smashes back into his face.
That was great.
That was awesome. Just stuff catching you like that off guard. I'm actually going to bring up something like that in our last movie in our main talk, though it's less comedic and more of an oh shit moment. But are you ready to move on to the big franchise talk?
I am.
All right. First, of course, I am going to pause and save what we have so far. I'm also going to get some more water and use the bathroom.
I'm Professor Charles Xavier. I built this school where mutants could learn to focus their powers in a positive way, and also learn that mankind was not evil, just uninformed.
I feel like it's pretty appropriate that our opening was a movie from Marvel's own sprawling universe, because we're about to discuss another movie franchise that, for obvious legal reasons, is not directly tied to that Marvel universe, but is still now its own universe spawned originally by Marvel. And that is, how many movies do they have in it now? But it is the Fox theatrical X-Men movie series.
Absolutely.
And actually, I think this is a very important series for superhero films, because I'd say I credit it with both it and the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy with initially revitalizing the superhero genre after kind of a little bit of a dead period. Stuff like, for people who either didn't pay attention or were too young to remember this, the superhero genre was pretty big from the late 80s to late 90s, thanks due in part mainly to the Tim Burton Batman. But towards the end, mistakes were made. You started getting stuff like Batman, Robin, and Steel, and stuff like that. And people lost interest. And then a few years after that, we got Fox had, I think I even read the reason why, different Marvel properties ended up in different studios, because they were in a financial crisis and decided to make some of that money back by finally selling the movie rights, which is how you got, Sony bought Spider-Man and still owns a big part of it. Fox bought X-Men, its spinoffs, including Deadpool, obviously, and Fantastic Four, which they have had less luck with, but they keep trying. And I think there are a few others. We talked about Universal still has a stake in Hulk movies, and there might be some others that I'm forgetting. So in 2000, they finally, I've brought it up before, I actually don't really read superhero comics, and it's not because I dislike them. I actually just I'd bought a compilation of a recent Rocket Raccoon miniseries, and I had a blast with it. I think it's called Chasing a Tail or something, where it's basically about, if you look it up, it's about him discovering the signs there might be another talking raccoon, and it's about all his dozens of ex-girlfriends teaming up to kill him. Because it's Rocket, of course. And
right.
No, really my main reason for not getting into superhero comics is because of how long they've been going and how many different offshoots there are. It is a huge time and money investment if you really want to catch yourself up on the years and decades of back material. So for me, I'll settle with movies and other stuff like TV shows, cartoons, and video games. I do love a lot of these franchises, but I have to enjoy them in different forms for the most part. And Tyrone, I might as well ask, do you have any experience with prior X-Men media, like comics, cartoons?
So I actually grew up on the 1990s X-Men cartoon series.
Yes, that is
what actually brought me into the entire comic book superhero realm, was the 1992 X-Men.
Yeah, that was a very big deal. I actually remember, I think, due in part to that, I feel like X-Men was their most prolific franchise of the 90s for Marvel.
Absolutely. That was
I didn't watch
forefront.
that one either, that also had kind of much of an ongoing plot. I did watch a lot of the Spider-Man cartoon though, because that was more broken up into little arcs than one ongoing story.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
I think it actually crossed those shows over. The X-Men showed up in Spider-Man with the same designs and actors, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Along with some others, I think Daredevil was in an episode, even though we didn't get a show. And I will say, my main exposure to X-Men before this, me and my brother did watch a fair bit of the follow-up cartoon, X-Men Evolution, which was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I know since then they've done Wolverine the X-Men, which I've heard good things about, an anime series that I've heard mixed things about, and I think that might be it in terms of X-Men-centric cartoons. Also, there've been a lot of games and such, too. I remember one people recommended where Wolverine, I think it was technically tied
Wolverine
into
and the X-Men.
No, I'm talking about the X-Men video games. I know people love that retro Konami beat-em-up. That was a fun, kind of the same vein as their Ninja Turtle stuff. There've been a lot of games on the Genesis and other stuff. I know people like those the X-Men Legend games, which are action RPGs.
Right.
I know there was one game that people recommended. It was technically tied to one of the Wolverine movies, but it was kind of its own M-rated gory thing. And also they got Mark Hamill to voice Logan, which I would like to hear. But really, and I'll wonder about, if the cartoon's success, and the fact that it probably fueled the comic success, made Fox take, you could see it as a gamble back then, sinking a lot of money and stars into the first film. And obviously it has paid off for them in a big way, because, so I'm going right here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If you count Deadpool, we are up to 10 released movies so far. With
Absolutely.
At least 3 or 4 more in some form of development, and possibly 3 scheduled for next year. Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna kick things off by saying that like there's been so many like articles and arguments about people hoping that Fox will either negotiate or give the rights back to Marvel and Disney so that they can be integrated to the MCU. And honestly, I kind of don't want them to at this point because they've basically got their own universe going with so many different characters and spin-offs and potential side series. And for me, also just as a logistical fact, you couldn't integrate this series into MCU at this point because in the MCU, mutants have never, ever been brought up. And that is the central conceit of this series, that it all boils down to the conflict that the existence of mutant humans brings to society. Mm-hmm, that is like such generally the core theme of this series. And what makes it unique, it is less a kind of generic, like, bad guy good versus evil, and something I admire about this, and that I know has been delved in, it's one of the central themes of the source material as well, is the fact that this is a conflict that is a lot harder to figure out and just put into black and white terms. Both sides have very good points to them, but also it's just a conflict with no easy answer, because the conceit is that we have started to see in humanity the existence of mutants, because the idea is that it also allows for a lot of creativity, because it's not like every person who's born a mutant has the same power. It's unpredictable, and you get all sorts of, I'm sure the comics ran with this too, just all sorts of different powers and different types of people and what they use them for. And that's one thing I love.
I want to go back to something you said for a second. I agree and disagree on Fox continuing to hold the rights to X-Men.
Yeah,
I do agree that it cannot take the current universe and story plot
and just say it's been part of the MCU all along. No.
Yeah, if Fox were to like go ahead and give their rights over, I do, however, wish that they would.
I would be fine with it if they did one of two things: either a one-off movie where you have like a dimensional crossover. Because Doctor Strange already established that the multiverse concept is a thing in MCU,
right? And
there's an infinite number of universes and such. So you can pretty much say like for one movie, some celestial person makes these two things intersect, and conflict rises from that. Just a one-off awesome thing. And I think like Hugh Jackman, we'll get to. He said Logan's going to be his last one, but he would consider doing it again if Disney integrated it. Like, I think he's all for that concept. The only other concept I would approve of is a total reboot. That would also have the disadvantage of throwing away everything that's been built up at this point. Though I will say that is definitely how I want them. I want Fantastic Four to go back to Marvel and get a reboot, because that's a concept perfectly suited for like starting fresh in this, and they are not handling it well.
I would love for all of the Marvel entities to be under one house.
Yeah, and I feel like people extremely have said like he thinks it's inevitable that one day there will be that kind of thing, especially because you've been hearing the rumblings about Disney considering buying Fox, and the Marvel rights are a big factor in that. And technically that might not happen, but they're I think both sides are very aware of the both the audience pleasing and the money, like how lucrative something like that would be.
Yeah. See, I know that Fox won't give up their rights unless Disney buys them, just because
they get a big check for it.
Right, like X-Men has made them a lot of money.
Yeah,
and so I know, they're still able to get. And right now they have their show, The Gifted, which seems to be doing okay.
Yeah. But like I said, I'm still fine with it remaining its own thing for the time being, because it is kind of its own universe at this point. Like, just X-Men alone, and, now they're touching into spin-off characters like Deadpool. Like, they've got their own little universe going on. And until it reaches the point where every movie is seen as terrible and no longer that much of a profit, then I'm okay with this. But actually, let's start. So let's start diving into things.
Let's go to the beginning.
Yeah, because we did talk this a little before. We're going to go in chronological order, and I will admit there were I was very late getting to this series. I don't know why I don't remember why I didn't get around to them in theaters. I think I wasn't quite I wasn't quite as in love with superhero movies as I am now. So I skipped on that. I did see the Spider-Man movies in theaters, and I enjoyed those. But I don't know. I guess I was never that interested in X-Men before. Like I said, I watched a little bit of Evolution. I love the Spider-Man cartoons, so that probably helped. And there are a couple movies that neither of us... I think there's one that neither of us haven't seen, and then there's a couple I haven't seen. You'll have to fill me on. But let's go in chronological order and start with the original X-Men from 2000, which is I think I'll be saying this about a lot of them, a very solid film and a good starting point to establish a lot of stuff.
It is a solid film. It was the first, I think, I don't know this is fact, but this is how I remember it. I think this was the first superhero film of our time.
In terms of kicking off that the wave that we're in now, I would say yes. Unless, did Blade come first?
See, I still kind of see Blade. I think Blade ran from the 90s into the 2000s, so it kind of like crossed the bridge.
Yeah, and that was still kind of its own thing. And some,
right.
It was connected. It was more R-rated and gritty.
Right, right. It was kind of its own separate thing. It kind of crossed in between the 90s and the 2000s.
And I also admit, I've not seen the Blade movies. I want to watch the first two at some point.
I kind of picture the old Batman movies, like Batman Forever, Batman
that's
and
what
Robin.
I'm saying. That was the boom, and then Batman and Robin ended up contributing to that hiatus.
Right. And so, X-Men in the 2000 year mark, that was the first superhero movie of our generation, and it kind of
that caught on.
This was stuck. It stuck.
It wouldn't have stuck you can't say there are 10 movies in it now if it didn't stick.
Right.
And the fact that fans are willing to stick through, because some of the movies we're going to talk about, I know, do not have good reputations, but it's still been able to recover. Not that can be hard for a franchise, but
yeah.
So talking about X-Men, I think one thing I want to touch on is very effective first scene where you get Magneto's childhood in the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
I was not prepared for that. And it kind of touches on, I think, one of things that makes Magneto fascinating, and what touches on the fact that it's a shade of gray is that both sides do have some valid points and some things that make it fit. Neither cut and dry approach will have perfect results.
Right.
Because the movies even touch on just how humanity in general, even be they civilians or be they people of authority, they've greatly varied in what they think of mutants, how they respond to them. In this, you have, I believe, Senator Kelly, who is firmly anti-mutant rights and views them as just because a lot of it falls down to is the problem is that higher ups have is that the problem with mutants and the abilities is that it's unpredictable. Mm-hmm. Like we said, we talked about how every power can be different. Who knows if we could get something? And in X3 we get a mutant who could very much be a walking apocalypse, and then X-Men Apocalypse we get literally that too. So you can kind of see that. It's just the fact that it's still kind of a heartless approach to be we gotta have to be rid of this and suppress this. And also at the same time, Magneto is you look at what mankind on its own is, what atrocities it's capable of, and what it's been doing to mutants. It's less risky if we just wipe them all out. But then you have Xavier talking about there's still a lot of wonderful people, and you be wiping out a bunch of good people who support us and have helped build the world that we live in. And just that's one of the things I admire most about this. And that's kind of constant in the series as a whole. And how? Go ahead.
My biggest thing that helped me latch on to the X-Men franchise was how much it actually mirrored society. And what was going on politically without actually putting a specific race or gender.
You can tie it to racial or sexual movements, but they still manage to make it its own thing. But Correct. You can kind of see that there are protests, there are politicians and companies on opposite sides. There's a lot of back and forth struggles in these things. That's just kind of a universal human issue. And this is adding kind of a not even supernatural, because it's based, you could still say it's rooted in science, that the idea is that the mutants may be the next step of human evolution, which is ties into Magneto's idea of might as well weed out what's not evolved. But it's kind of a universal.
One thing that I really, really liked is I liked that the first film actually opened with Magneto instead of opening with Xavier or Cyclops or Wolverine, because you immediately got the idea that you got the idea that Magneto is not a shitty person for the sake of being a shitty person.
No, that's what I'm saying. He has motive.
Yeah, he's got a lot of motive, and those roots are deep.
Yes, though it has turned him into a cold-hearted person, which I'll touch on some of his. There's one action in the third movie that I was like, that is cruel. But Yeah, I think that's what. And just the fact, like, let's talk to some of the main characters and actors, because now, were you into? So you were into X-Men before the movie started?
Absolutely.
Were a lot of people saying before they confirmed it that they wanted Patrick Stewart for Xavier?
I don't know. I don't even know if that was a fan choice, but that was the best choice.
It was a good choice. And I still say to this day, he would have been a perfect Mr. Freeze. If you're thinking about, like, compare, like, the animated series version of Freeze to what we got with Schwarzenegger. He's a bald but kind of dignified figure. If you want bald and dignified, it's hard to top Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see Patrick Stewart being Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, he's too old now, but back,
my only downside to that is that Patrick Stewart is a little old.
No, I'm talking about back in the 90s.
Still,
right after Star Trek, he could have done it. Usually got some stuntmen for the action parts, but obviously now it's too late. But and to be fair, and we've got they've got be able to get a lot of mileage out of him with X. He is a great fit for that kind of wise but still both caring and both trying to be cautious and logical too. Which
absolutely,
I guess what I know about Picard, I guess maybe not quite the caring, but still a good-hearted person. So it kind of makes sense that they would get him because after he blew up with Star Trek, and same goes for Ian McKellen as Magneto because goddamn. Someone who has to bring a lot of gravitas and just, someone who's angry but with a reserved mannerism about it. Also, I just love the fact that apparently the experience of these movies have made those two BFFs. Have you ever seen like the photos and stuff they do together? Like they just love to hang out.
Yeah.
Pretty wonderful.
I really love one thing that I think has always astounded the fans of X-Men was, especially with the first 3 movies, was how well they were able to pair these actors as these fictional cartoon characters that looked so similar. Patrick Stewart as Professor Xavier, Ian as Magneto, Anna Paquin as Rogue, Hugh Jackman as Logan. I mean, these actors, it's almost like they were born to be these people from the X-Men franchise.
Is what made Hugh Jackman's career. Like, he was not that big a name. He probably viewed as a risk back when they cast him as Wolverine.
Absolutely.
But obviously it's paid off in spades, even though that period may be over, though never say never, obviously. And though there are others that I think people complain about, like I don't know that much about X-Men, like I said, and I do like Halle Berry, but she is way too young to be what I get Storm is like, because what I have seen in the cartoon, she's supposed to be kind of more of a middle-aged, almost maternal figure in the same way as X. At least, like, someone who get the experience would be a little more experienced, and just Halle Berry just looks a little too young and almost. You know what I'm saying?
I actually felt Halle Berry was perfect. I thought Anna Paquin wasn't old enough.
Oh, how old is Rogue supposed to be in like the base? I guess in the 90s cartoon she was more of an adult.
Yeah, like
she kind of adopted the
Storm.
They kind of made her into the
Rogue. They were all adults.
Yeah, like in the movies they kind of put Rogue in the role you'd see like Kitty Pryde or Jubilee, like the teen, the rookie.
Right.
Like, her introduction to all of this is ours as well.
Right.
So I guess that was an interesting choice. But they still do some interesting things with it, like how some of the stuff in the first movie, like how they deal with her absorption abilities. Like that really effective first scene when she's kissing a boy and she like fucks him up and she's like, "Don't touch me!" Like that's good. Oh, one of my favorite parts, she wakes up Logan just instinctually. He stabs her, and then she knows what to do and touches him to heal herself. Mm-hmm. Like again, the idea of how some of these abilities can play off each other is pretty clever.
And I think the only way. And I know why they did it from a writing standpoint. The only way that they could not make Rogue into a
adult
god form was to make her younger before she actually touched Captain Marvel. Blase.
Like in the comics cartoons, she could fly too.
Yeah, because what happened was in the comic books, and actually they explained it in the 1992 animated X-Men, she got in a fight with Captain Marvel. And she held on
to the flying
her
powers.
for way too long. And so Rogue permanently got her flight and superhuman strength permanently.
That's very different from what we got here.
Because
But to be fair,
she held it for like a half an hour.
yeah, to be fair, they probably didn't have the right to Captain Marvel.
Right.
Because obviously Marvel has that now.
And as far as a story plot goes, she couldn't be this super overpowered.
That wouldn't fit her introduction aspect here. I can see where they made some changes there. And just some other things I want to talk about. I remember one thing I was not expecting visually is to be grossed out by what happens to Senator Kelly. Because their plan is we're going to use this machine and Rogue's powers to infect everybody with like mutant powers. But then you see what happens to him. You're like, that is not a good idea.
Yeah, and the humans just end up dying.
Well, the only one they use it on, because like that first part, where, like he realized he can like squish his body through the body bars, and that threw me off. First time I saw it, I was like, oh my god, what is this? And then his death, where he basically just melts into liquid, is like, ugh. But it's effective. And I like how they kind of make a little. It's actually a little what's the word? Not ambitious. Ambiguous. Where his allegiances are lying by the end, because he's just basically saying to Storm's I'm kind of glad I'm not dying alone. But you still know if he loves mutants, and obviously he is no longer in a state to say so. But also the other thing I want to talk about from a production standpoint, this film, I think they gave it a smaller budget than the others, just because they weren't, obviously, especially considering the time, they weren't sure. And it does feel a little smaller than the others, especially in the climax. You get to the ends of 2 and 3 and just how bombastic and huge everything is. This is a little more muted.
They played it very smart. They put the effects where there should have been effects.
Yeah, with the powers. Maybe not so much the set pieces.
Right. Also and they use the powers and use the effects. They kind of condensed them. And so they made sure that there was enough dialogue where you weren't, okay, use their powers. I want to see things happen and stuff. And I want Storm to like make a hurricane and all this other stuff. And it was just more of the subtleties of the superpowers. And then, when something big needed to happen, then it happened.
Yeah. And just one other thing I want to say that's cute. And then if you have anything else to say, you can, but then we can move on. An interesting production note. Do you know who 2 of the co-writers were for this?
I do not.
Joss Whedon, who obviously got more closely tied to other Marvel products.
Right.
The one that I find interesting is David Hayter. Do you know who that is?
David Hayter, yes.
The voice of Solid Snake up till Metal Gear Solid 5. And he's written some other stuff too. I actually met him at AwesomeCon this year. Nice guy.
Nice.
And he also, I believe, he wrote one of the rough drafts for X2 as well. I think after that he was no longer involved. But yeah, he is not just an actor; he's a screenwriter, which is interesting.
So, I mean, I know I've followed Joss Whedon for years, and he is such a phenomenal writer. And as much to a certain extent, X-Men, the first X-Men doesn't really hold well to time, but it holds well to everything that they set up. And Joss Whedon, I think, does a phenomenal job with being a catalyst for someone else to step in. He was like, look, I'm not going to claim this 10-year long project. However, I will jumpstart it, and whoever can come behind me can run with it.
He still has a history of kind of behind-the-scenes punch-up. Apparently, he helped with the script for the first Captain America, First Avenger, but didn't receive credits. And, of course, we know what's going on with Justice League now, and I believe it's still understood that Zack Snyder will receive sole directing credit. So, it's interesting how that works. But is there anything else you want to say about this, or do you want to move on to X2?
Onward and upward.
Yeah, I think this is where things got better. This was both, I'd say, a bigger and better film. Just some interesting, more content. And granted, I didn't skim through this quite as much as the others, so I kind of remember like bullet points. I will get this out of the way because I feel like this 1 and 3 are the most guilty of. I know something like if you're a fan of Cyclops in the comics, most people were not happy with how the movies treated him in the original trilogy. He's basically supposed to be one of their leaders. Here, this became the Xavier and Wolverine headed kind of thing. in the original trilogy with Storm and Jean Grey to a lesser degree. But I feel like this, even I noticed, like the fact that he's not in it much, and then he's gone for half the movie, and then comes back brainwashed till the end. Like, yeah, if I cared about Cyclops, this would piss me off.
So, because I have read and watched X-Men till I'm blue in the face, Cyclops goes through shit.
So when you say it was a missed opportunity, how they handled him here?
Actually, I thought they handled Cyclops appropriately. I just think it went just a hair too far.
I feel like with each movie, it would go a little more too far with what they did with him.
Well, with it being only the second, I think like the line was crossed in how broken Cyclops was. I think that's something that could have happened in X3, where Jean Grey became like broken and evil, and she became the Phoenix, and then Cyclops is very emotional about it. But with X2, I think that was a little too early to make him such a broken Boy Scout.
I have heard people complain that people who don't like Cyclops is that he falls to that victim. I always hear people compare him to either Superman or Leonardo the Ninja Turtles. Like, if you're going to be the straight, like, good moral leader, you're usually one of the least interesting characters. But I mean, I still wouldn't have minded them putting some new spins on him to make him more interesting. But again, it wasn't a deal breaker. I think this movie was where I noticed it the most, because X3, at least you're not thinking about him as much past a certain point.
Right.
But the thing with
Cyclops is he's the Captain America of the X-Men. He is the Superman of the X-Men. Mm-hmm. But the problem is he is very much human, and he is very much still a Boy Scout at heart. Yeah. And he didn't get a childhood. His parents were lost, and he's fighting this war. He's like essentially a general, the second in command of this war, and really he's not ready for it emotionally. Yeah. And so he'll do it. He knows he's called to do it, but he really just wants to get married, settle down, have kids, be
preferably with Jean.
Yeah, he wants to be with his Jean Grey, and everyone else can do whatever they want to do, and he wants to move off to Minnesota on a farmhouse and live life. But he knows he has to fight this fight, and so when the one thing that's driving him to move forward in this war is broken, or is dying, or is mentally unstable, aka for all of those things Jean Grey, then he becomes broken. Mm-hmm. And so that's the whole thing behind Cyclops, is he's either this super awesome general that leads all the X-Men into battle, or he's a really broken boy and emotional and is just like, dude, please pull your pants up and move on.
The movies kind of choose to go for neither for the most part and just put us to the sidelines. Because I think even James Marsden, he said he's expressed disappointment with it. But actually, there's still other stuff to talk about with X2, because I want to say, is this like the only one in the main trilogy where you could argue the main villain is a human rather than a mutant because of Stryker?
Yes.
Like, Magneto's still a problem in this, but most of the real shit that goes down is because, like, I mean, he infiltrates the mansion and tries to kidnap a bunch of kids.
Yep.
Like, he's doing some brutal shit. This is where you start getting more into more of the bad side of the military in this world. Right.
And this is the whole thing with X-Men, is that the X-Men fought a lot of wars on a lot of different sides. They had Magneto. Mm-hmm. They had Phoenix from within their own ranks. They had the military. They had the president. They had all of these different people that pretty much hated.
Well, I know that the president in X2 and 3, actually, he's a little more tolerant of mutants, but he's still trying to be someone who's trying to be very cautious.
There's a point where they change presidents.
Oh yeah, it's a different guy in the third one. The second one, was he against them? Because I remember the first scene. I rewatched the first scene with the assassination attempt from Nightcrawler, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. That can't have helped the president's mind. The third one, we get the whole Beast stuff where it's like, we'll get to that. But But you are talking about, like, like I said, that's one thing. It's a very complex hierarchy of allegiances and opinions. And that's what makes it
Right.
a very, like, this is a conflict that cannot be easily or quickly solved.
It's not like the Avengers where, are there aliens? Let's go fight them.
Yep.
X-Men
Oh, they're
have
dead.
to fight
There's Ultron. He's dead.
everything. Yeah, right.
Like, they have to keep throwing different villains at you, or even just build them up for a while, like Thanos, before they get their time to shine. Really, even this is like you do get a lot of different villains, but you also get recurring, like Magneto, obviously, and just there's still this. They're all united by this one issue. And it's a kind of a clever way to keep the plot going.
Really, the X-Men are all about survival. They don't have just one common enemy. They fight the government. They fight each other. They fight other mutants. They fight machines. There's a whole bunch of fights that happen in the X-Men just overall. And I think this was the part that, okay, the first time we fought our common enemy. Now it's the government, and that was a whole different side of things.
Yeah, and then 3. Do you want to get to Last Stand?
Let's do it.
So, okay, there's nothing else you want to say about X2. I just want to make sure.
Not at all. Let's do it.
Okay, so I watched this for the first time on Friday, and this was actually kind of a pleasant surprise for me because this movie, whenever I hear it brought up, it has a pretty bad reputation, and I'm not gonna lie, I enjoyed it.
I loved X3 as
good.
Opposed to a lot. Now, of course, X-Men does hold a very dear place in my heart. I probably got an eye roll from Christopher. I don't know.
Are you talking about the first one?
No, X3.
Yeah. No, I would put it on par with X2 for the most part.
Like, I loved X3. Most people did not like X3. But so from the most part, what I understand most people do not like X3 about is that Jean Grey did not turn into the Phoenix that they remember. It was so far-fetched.
I know there were some big changes to that, and that's what the next prequel movie is going to be. Is they're going to try and do it again and be more faithful.
My thing is this, okay? Films can only go so far within the 1.5 to 2.5 hours that they have to tell a story.
Right.
And we've never introduced any kind of aliens. We never introduced any kind of galactic beings.
No, they have not done that yet.
Any of the. None of those things happened.
I know. I did read for a while. There were some executives at Fox who really hated that idea, but maybe now at some point we'll see.
But my thing is, the Phoenix does actually make Jean Grey crazy.
Well, in the comics.
Yes,
because it's the idea is it's basically a split personality. Because there are moments where you see Jean Grey come back out and she's horrified about what's going on.
That's exactly what happens when the Phoenix takes over her body. There are two personalities that live in this body host of Jean Grey. The only difference is they took the alien aspect out of it. That's all that happened.
Oh, the Phoenix was caused by aliens in the comics?
So in the comic books, the Phoenix is a galactic deity entity that essentially helps the universe start life or end life. Mm-hmm. So she's this. The Phoenix is this cosmic force. So first of all, I'm sorry.
Does it like possess Jean or something?
Essentially, that's what happens. Is that Jean gets possessed by this galactic deity.
Okay. Yeah, they did change that then. This was basically a setup of the fact that Xavier said this was an aspect when he was first training her that he taught her to suppress, but the experience of near death awakened it.
Right.
I don't mind that, but I guess I could see why some fans would.
I don't mind it at all. It was a very good explanation, and it's still to some point held true to the character.
The inverse is I don't mind talking about another much maligned third entry. I actually don't mind Spider-Man 3 that much, but I remember still finding it a little jarring when they touched on, a space alien symbiote, and Sandman in general. Like, it felt like it went more exaggerated in the first two and its villains, and that was a little weird. I feel like this could have been the same way, so maybe they were in the right, at least as this series goes. Mm-hmm. But, so some other aspects of it, because this adds even more to the dilemma because of the concept of the vaccine that suppresses the mutant gene. and just the can of
Yep.
worms that opens. I love the fact that we get Beast in this, played by Kelsey Grammer.
Yep.
You want the most proper man to play the most proper X-Man? Get Frazier.
Yep.
And again, you were talking about, so I guess, there's this new president who is bringing him into his council to get his, get a mutant's thoughts on this whole thing. And, like, there's so many parts of the touch, like, like, things are only going to get worse and, like, what kind of, like, social drama this announcement is going to unleash. And also, I like the fact that, go ahead, did you say something?
Now, speaking of character changes, you were talking about Beast. One thing that Beast has always been was a literary and a scientist.
Yeah, he's the scholar of the X-Men, pretty much.
Right. And then, so what was a little bit more jarring to me was that he became a politician or a lawyer.
Yeah, well, he became a representative, kind of.
Yeah.
/ diplomat. But I mean, at least the prequels touched on that he started with his roots in science.
Right.
I mean, it kind of makes sense if anybody was going to be a representative, it would be him or, like, Charles or Jean Grey.
And I think since he was introduced in The Last Stand, that would have been a prime opportunity for Beast's science side to come out versus a political side.
Yeah, that had to wait till First Class.
And to me, that didn't make sense. When you have this cure, it would have been a very good, easy writing plot to have Beast toilly working in his science lab, working to reverse engineer
the cure.
Yeah,
I mean, I think I kind of view that as, like, he knew, like, this is something bigger than just him, and they had to discuss all angles. Because again, like I'm talking about this, it's like the idea of that this whole conflict is such a complex thing that even him doing something like that could cause even more issues. But also just touch something I like is going towards the shades of gray. I feel like X3 is the biggest example of trying to show that there's still people of authority who are somewhat on this, some not completely uncaring. Because you have the subplot of Angel in this, who is his dad being this executive who finds out and is the one who, like, motivates the thing to happen. But as more goes on, it's less that, like, I hate mutants and more like he is well aware of just all the horrible stuff that's been happening to them, and he sees suppressing it as, stopping them from prejudice. And there's the fact that he's saying, like, he's saying to he doesn't disown his sons or anything. He's like, this is how you can get a better life. This is how you can not be hated and that kind of stuff. But then the son finally realizes, no, that's the life you want me to have, and I got to make this decision in the end. And that's kind of clever.
Yeah. I've always disliked Angel.
I know nothing about him, but at least he's still kind of a relatively minor character. He's used as the ambassador of using the vaccine, and some other stuff. I'm trying to remember what else I was. I'm looking through the plot. I know, like, some of the thing I always hear people pissed off about this was, like, going back to Cyclops, killing him like a half hour in, and. People were so angry about that, I remember. Especially the fact that we don't really see his on-screen death. Even though, judging from what we see Jean doing later on, we know how he died. The fact that there's no corpse anywhere and just the glasses, she disintegrated him.
I also have to say, so my backstory with X-Men The Last Stand, again, constantly being a fan of the X-Men series, and I was in high school for X-Men 2, and then X-Men 3 was coming out as I was graduating high school. Mm-hmm. And we actually, as my high school, our class theme was X-Men. Okay. And we knew the entire graduating class was going to go to the theater and watch X-Men Last Stand because that was our graduating theme.
And how'd that go?
And I remember I yelled so loud in the theater because I was so upset that Cyclops died. And I'm not a fan of Cyclops, but I do know that he's always there.
It also feels like salt in the wound after hoping, like, maybe he'll finally get a spotlight in this.
Right. Like,
the movie just do not care about him.
It was very, well, like, Wolverine has always kind of stolen the limelight of X-Men,
Yeah.
but my point was Cyclops is always there. So there's always a switch between limelights of Cyclops and Wolverine. And quite honestly, I hate them both equally.
Maybe that's why we haven't talked about Wolverine
I could care less
much.
about either of them.
Do you like Hugh Jackman's performances, though?
I love Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, but I could also take Hugh Jackman as something else. So Wolverine is just not a selling point to me when it comes to X-Men. I would much rather see Storm, Jubilee, superpowered Rogue. Give me more Charles
Rogue's
Xavier.
really downplayed in this movie too.
Absolutely. I think always
they kind of
Rogue
build
has
up
always
more the
been
Iceman
downplayed.
and Kitty Pryde stuff.
Yes. Oh, Kitty Pryde. Give me Bobby all day long. Give me Colossus all day long. I just don't
Colossus
care
is
about Cyclops.
another issue is they throw. I'll get my two other issues out of the way here. They throw a lot, like so many new mutants at you that a lot of them don't really feel like they get enough time to shine.
Right.
Even really iconic ones like Juggernaut and stuff. Also, now I think one thing that helps that like makes me not like the X-Men movies quite as much as the MCU is that I love the MCU style of humor, and X-Men did not go for humor quite as much. And honestly, some of the jokes they do during the climax are pretty bad.
Pretty bad.
One in particular that I think I knew about before I even saw the movie because it was so tone deaf that they had to have Juggernaut say, "I'm the Juggernaut, bitch." Like,
right.
Few things can take you out of a movie as much as that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, they did that because of the meme.
There are a couple things that will take you out of a movie, and it's, Juggernaut saying, "I'm the Juggernaut, bitch." It's Morgan Freeman in Wanted saying, "Kill this motherfucker." Like, there's certain things that just should not happen because they're so left field.
I know it's not a joke. We're going to get into, I think, the most hated character change in Wolverine Origins. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Oh boy,
we'll get there.
Yeah,
but I also remember.
we'll get there.
I mean, just one-off jokes like when Beast is trying to do a quote in the middle of a battle, and then he just goes like, "Oh, you get the picture," and starts fighting.
Yeah, right.
That's not clicking, guys. This is not your forte. Even though I think this might have my favorite climax of the three original films outside of those jokes. Like, it just gets so... You already have that crazy stuff with the bridge. Then you have that big horde battle, like the X-Men versus Magneto's army. And, capping it off with Phoenix letting loose. And that is, like, epic, I feel. Just
the one thing that I will say that I kind of really appreciated in all of the films that we did not talk about yet, and then we can move on to the next rendition of X-Men.
I have one other thing I want to say about it, but then we'll move on.
Okay. Is how they changed and they matured over the series physically, like the different hairstyles, the change of clothes is something that you don't get to see within the comics or even the cartoons, because the cartoons, you have the character and they wear this hairstyle and they have their uniform and that's it. But I loved seeing Storm's new hairstyle. I love seeing Jean Grey's new hairstyle. And I liked how they interacted, like Storm talking to Beast saying, "Oh, I love what you've done with your hair." And he's like, back at you. And, it was a very nice play on, these people are growing up in front of you.
I think I appreciated Storm in this one more than the first two. Especially because they have to set up the fact that she inherits the mentorship role at the academy. Because except the other thing, Professor X dies in this movie. A very drawn out and brutal disintegration by Jean. And I actually do like also the acting of Wolverine and Storm in this, because there are a lot of other instances, including at the end of this movie, where you're getting over the top, staring at the sky, going "No!" And this is more just collapsing and crying, like something more realistic and not too drawn out. Like, yeah, I buy this, even though the after credits thing is kind of a cop out of how, like, oh, that comatose guy you mentioned for no reason, I guess it was his twin brother, and that's him now. All right, to be fair, so only one of the movies has really dealt with that new Xavier, which is Day 2 Year Past, in a smaller role. So that's less egregious to me than it would have been if we got an X-Men 4 and you're just like, yeah, let's go with it. But okay, anything else you want to say about 3?
Nope.
Oh, I will say, I'm reading here, James Marsden was actually completely fine with what they did with Cyclops, because I think he had basically accepted what a small role was at this point, and he said it felt better for the movie since you were introducing so many characters. It's also funny that when I think of James Marsden, I think of Enchanted, because that was the first thing I saw him in.
Mm.
You know what I'm talking about? Did you see that movie?
Easter eggs? Yes, I do.
Cyclops is like a cartoon singing fairy tale prince.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good.
I'm okay with Easter eggs as other characters, but when you start focusing on too many people, then I'm overwhelmed.
Oh, also, I'll say a clever thing is, one mutant I saw was like, I guess he's called Multiple Man, that Magneto hires when he breaks out of the Mystique jailbreak. I love that fake out with him where it's like they're made the camera like, man, it's they're all there. This is like, are they trapping them? What is their plan? And it turns out it's all him. And I'm like, that's smart. Oh, and yes, before I forget, I think this one has the most ice cold Magneto moment, at least as McKellen, when they're saving Mystique. She gets the cure and becomes normal naked lady, and he's just like, yeah, I'm sorry, you can't be part of our cause anymore. Like, his right hand woman, and just because of that, bye. Like, that's cruel.
Yeah. Magneto's all about his mutants, and if you're not a
which
mutant,
makes it very cathartic at the end. They stab him and is like, how's it feel to be one of them now? And he is just like, the one time you see McKellen turn to a scared, doddering old man, and that, because he's lost everything he's ever about. Though obviously, literally the last second of the movie is kind of to indicate how that can change. Also, Inception totally ripped off his last shot. This movie.
Yes.
The chest piece, like, the last second moves like a millimeter, just so you know, it's going to wear off in due time. But I guess we can move on now.